Hello, today is Monday, April 27th. Welcome to episode 588 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Morgan Venia. I'm joined today by founder and executive director Jamil Jaffer, Senior Fellow Amy Mitchell, and fellow Algene Sajeri. Today, we are talking about the events that transpired over the weekend at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Now, for background, the dinner is more commonly known as Nerd Prom. It's put on by the White House Correspondents Association to celebrate journalists and the First Amendment. The first one was actually held in 1921. This year was particularly significant because after not attending the dinner during his first administration, President Trump reversed course and made the decision to attend this year's dinner. It was not without incident. As attendees were midway through their appetizers, shots rang out near the security checkpoint. Cole Thomas Allen, a fully armed 31-year-old teacher from Torrance, California, fired multiple shots, hitting a Secret Service agent before he was tackled and taken into custody. This sent panic throughout the event, where security rushed to secure President Trump and the numerous cabinet officials and congressional leadership in attendance. While many questions remain about Allen's motives, accountability, and the sanity of our nation, what is clear is that President Trump wants to reschedule the event within 30 days. So let's get into it. Amy, you have attended the White House Correspondents' Dinner many times. I mean, can you tell us, is Washington Hilton cursed? This for our listeners is actually where the dinner took place, and it's also where President Reagan was shot over 46 years ago. Yeah. The event on Saturday was also the latest of 5 security breaches that we've seen for the president. So, Amy, please set the scene here. How are we to understand the events and the implications of them?
Thanks, Morgan. Having been to the dinner, having watched the security, it's always been a high profile event. But the security has always been what we saw on Saturday night. It is, people can come to the pre-events. You really don't pass any major checkpoints until those mags that we saw the shooter run through. There is a heavy Secret Service, DC police, presence at the event, but it is not a hard event to penetrate. And I think, there have been calls to talk about, the Secret Service and are they doing their job? And I just want to remind everybody that this is their job, is to, when something is breached, that they step up and they take the fire, not the president. And they have been successful in that, regardless of the attempts on the president's lives over the last 2-3 years. They have stopped him from being shot. And we saw, on Saturday night, a uniformed division Secret Service agent was shot. He had a vest on. Apparently his phone helped stop the bullet. So I guess that's, kudos to Apple. But they are doing their job. Can they always, do they have to be right 100% of the time? Yes. But when something does happen, are they trained to step in front of that bullet? They are. And I think that's what a lot of people miss about the Secret Service, is that they will put themselves forward. That is their mission. And so I personally am grateful to the Secret Service and their actions on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm. So, Jamil, this is getting to sort of Amy's point here. Like we're now looking at sort of an after action. This is about the time where, we start pointing fingers about who's responsible for President Trump, being involved in yet another event where he could well have been maimed or worse. Fingers have been pointed at Susie Wiles, Sean Curran, even the president himself for reducing the size of the workforce, supposedly. So talk to me here about how you think there should be accountability for what went down.
Look, I mean, anytime the president's going to be at a public event, whether it's a private event like this, where the public is invited and it's a ticketed event, or a mass rally where the president goes all the time, or he walks the rope line, even at any event. I mean, the president is going to be vulnerable at many times during his time in office. And it's just the nature of the American presidency. It's the nature of the American public. We've long been under threat from foreign terrorists, but we are not prepared to, at least at this point in our time in this country, to live the way the citizens of Israel, for example, do. They live under constant threat. They have a lot more security precautions. You get on El Al Airlines, there's huge amounts of security vetting. The same is true when you exit Israel or travel even around. Um, we're not the American people are not prepared to live that way, and the American president is not prepared to operate that way. President Trump being clear he's going to host this event in 30 days and he's going to do it again, and he's not taking no for an answer. And so, that being said, look, the guy here did penetrate. Cole Thomas Allen did penetrate the security perimeter. Obviously, you could see on that video the setup was not ideal. He just went right around the mags. He's carrying multiple firearms on him. Exchanged fire with a Secret Service officer. He wasn't shot. He was ultimately tackled. So I think there are questions to ask about. When you watch the video, though, you see at least a half dozen Secret Service and other law enforcement pull their firearms, point them at him. So the guy was not going to make it through that hallway down the escalators, and then downstairs. Obviously, there's a large number of armed people as well, both in the room and outside the room. So his plan was not going to work from the jump because of the presence of the Secret Service, to Amy's point, and because of the presence of other armed law enforcement. But the fact that he got past the mags is not ideal. The fact that we're not mags at the entrances. The Washington Hilton, I was there a month and a half ago for an American Legion event. It is a hard place to secure. There are a lot of entrances. The hallways are weird. But to get to the ballroom, there's really only a couple of ways to go. And there's that elevator and there's a set of escalators. So there's no reason you couldn't have had multiple checkpoints earlier, a little more defense in depth. So there'll be, I don't think anybody's going to get fired. I mean, in this administration, until recently at least, nobody got fired. Now people are getting fired, but not necessarily for these sort of reasons. So we'll see if anybody gets fired. I doubt it. I doubt they will, but I don't think this was a major problem. But are there improvements they can make? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just, Morgan, can I just really quick just key off of something that Jamil said really quick is, he wasn't shot. And that is typically Secret Service protocol is they shoot to stop, not to kill a lot of times because they are looking for the information right from that person to see if it's a wider conspiracy. So I think that's an important point to just make that a lot of times they don't shoot to kill, they shoot to stop.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good point, Amy. So, Algene, turning to you, let's look at some of the more political implications of this. Clearly we're seeing, President Trump coming out, making the case for why there needs to be a White House ballroom. We're seeing, Democrats come out saying that, posting on Twitter, please stop trying to kill the president. So there are a lot of other sort of threads here that I think folks are pulling at from a political angle. Obviously, we've got the November midterms coming up. They're going to be very tight. Republicans are in a pretty delicate position here. And, as we saw last time around, when the president was shot in Pennsylvania, we saw a massive uptick in his poll numbers and sort of momentum build behind him prior to the election. So wondering what you have to say about this.
Well, I think this incident really gives us an opportunity to take stock of our national security priorities as a nation. I find it quite interesting that the administration immediately used this incident to justify the planned White House ballroom. I think just yesterday, shortly after the shooting, the DOJ wrote a letter to the National Trust for Historic Preservation demanding that the organization drop its lawsuit against the ballroom. They even said, I think right about now, that they need to dismiss the lawsuit by 9 a.m. today, which is right about now, or the government will move to dissolve the injunction and dismiss the case. And so I think it's really interesting that it was such an urgent action that was taken around this ballroom. I find it really troubling, though, that this urgency is not given or afforded to other types of violence. Especially when it comes to school shootings, protecting our children should be of the same level of security and urgency. We should not have greater urgency for the security of elite events than for the security of our elementary schools, in my opinion. If national security means protecting leaders from gunmen, it must also mean protecting our children from gunmen. This is the same country that can build secure ballrooms for presidents. So we must be able to build safer classrooms for our students and teachers. And protecting children is not a partisan issue. When you speak about the politics, I think everyone agrees that we should be looking at the broader picture here, and we should be protecting the children as well. I do think that even though I don't want to get too far off topic here as far as national security issues, but I do think it's important to really recognize and take a moment to recognize the importance of protecting our leaders. Very important. But I also want to take a moment on this platform to just point out the need for the same urgency when it comes to other types of gun violence. We can't call on our nation secure if our greatest treasure, our children, remain vulnerable. And so I think that it says a lot about our values that we're, rushing to such urgency. Of course, it's the president, certainly important and urgent, but we should have that same urgency for America's children.
All right. All right. So that's a wrap. Thanks as always to Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their helping in producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, April 29th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart, fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.